What's up, guys? It's Emmanuel Football Club Magazine, and we're back for episode 2. And we're here with John and Ryan. How was your week? How was the weekend game? I know Ryan has been watching a little bit of Olympics. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's been good. We're on the third week of preseason, so working hard, enjoying the progress of the team, and honestly, there's a month left until the season starts, so I can't wait.
Yeah, kind of a similar boat. Preseason prep has started. Getting my boards updated to call another great season of USL and Next Pro. And with USL, it's a lot easier because the rosters are so kind of linear. But we're in full swing with prep with USL and MLS Next Pro. Just having fun, getting back in the swing of things. Just like John, excited to get back in full swing in a month. But we have these next 3 years of build-up time for a reason, and it only makes the anticipation even more. It only makes the anticipation grow every day. We keep thinking about it.
For sure. Jacob, tell us a little bit about your weekend. How was that like?
I don't know.
Yeah, tell us.
Oh no, I was watching. I was betting on Man United yesterday. I thought they would win, but I guess they didn't.
Anyways, this is Jacob. He is the
Our
production.
boss.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's the boss.
Is the boss right now. And yeah, so I mean, over the weekend, I actually spent that trying to figure out the audio from the last podcast, which finally got posted, right? And then yesterday, I got to go to the kit reveal party here in for Charlotte FC. So that was fun. So that's one thing we want to start off talking about, right? So the kit reveals. What were y'all's thoughts on this year's jerseys?
I like them. I mean, I love Adidas jerseys. They're great. Something that maybe we can go into a little bit is like how creative are they really? I feel like I love soccer jerseys all over Europe. I'm a collector. So you see the kids that are coming out in Europe, different brands, doing different things. And one thing that, since the beginning, since they joined Adidas is like, how creative are they? How special are those kids really?
Yeah, so jerseys are a lot of fun. To see how these teams and Adidas or whoever the distributors are in other leagues, how they like to have fun with the designs and how they like to put those little Easter eggs in throughout, which are one of my favorite parts of all jersey design, whether if it's in soccer, other sports, those little details. That's really where, really the devil's in the details. And those are some of the best parts when these new kits come out every year.
For sure. And you were talking about the creativity, but sometimes we should talk about the lack of creativity, right? Because I mean, for example, there's some jerseys that just don't change year after year, right? We could say that about the Chicago Fire. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Chicago Fire jersey, man, it just feels like it's the same thing every year, right? And then, for example, the Charlotte jersey does have some changes, but it feels like a copy of the first year. Just with little tiny details here and there, but overall it seems to be the same design over and over again. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just really interesting how they do it, right? Because I don't know if this has changed, but when I used to be in the MLS, they used to get one new jersey every year, either the home or the away, which I think that's something that they still do in most cases. I think teams maybe like Miami that sell more jerseys, maybe they can get a new home and away every year, which I understand. It can be hard to get ideas for new jerseys. I mean, you talking about boring jerseys. What about your team, Madrid? Just have the same
wow,
jersey every year, man.
that is crazy. We could say the same about Barcelona. Ryan, your thoughts on this?
I mean, yeah, like you're mentioning how some kits kind of stay the same, and that's one thing that no matter what it is, like there are some teams that kind of stick to a formula, right? Atlanta United, they didn't really do anything different. It's the same classic, like black and red striping, or like RSL, they went from like a vertical line to a horizontal line, right? So that's maybe the one negative of like doing it year after year is you eventually kind of lose ideas at the end of the day. But some of these teams just went all out, you know. San Jose Earthquakes paying tribute to the Grateful Dead, or Philly paying tribute to kind of the anniversary, the 250th anniversary upcoming of the U.S. Just little bits like that. But when they flop, like you mentioned, they're absolute flops. But when they hit and they find those little nuggets, boy, can they be absolutely beautiful. Like Philly Unions is my favorite of this new bunch because of those little nods to like the founding of the U.S., for example.
I agree. I was looking at them and I thought the Philly Union one was like really cool. The details on the jersey. And I'll tell you guys this, me as a player, like there's nothing more excited than showing up and, getting new jerseys and new designs. Also because I'm like a geek, like I said, I'm a collector, so I love soccer jerseys. I keep like one jersey from every year that I play home, away, third, whatever it is. And I always try to trade jerseys with whoever I can just because, I think jerseys are so cool. It's such a beautiful part of the game. Like you have here so many iconic moments, and then you just see the jerseys and they remind you of certain players. And I think that's the beauty of the jerseys.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think two of the teams that did a really good job this year was New York Red Bulls and New England Revolution. I'm not sure if you guys got a chance to see those, but New England Revolution seems like a firework and then just kind of like falling all over the shirt. That was really cool. And I think New York Red Bulls, they usually do a good job with their jerseys. Even when they look a little boring, you start looking at the details and it's like, okay, I see what you did there. But yeah, even the boring jerseys though, like the ones that we're saying could be flops. Um, Most fans don't have, well, I'm not gonna say most fans, but like some fans don't actually go out and buy the original authentic jersey, so they're never gonna be able to feel the texture, which is it's another thing that changes every year. And this year, if you, I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to feel it, but it's a very interesting texture. Just it feels literally like the Black Panther skin. I don't know what it's called. Do you guys know what it's called? No. But yeah, something like that. But you've seen the Black Panther and how like the skin feel, well, it looks like, it's got ridges and stuff like that. Well, that's how the new MLS jerseys kind of feel.
Yeah, I think it's cool that, they have good texture and stuff. Obviously, as a player, you're looking at performance and you want to have a jersey that, that sweats, that's gonna like keep you cool, whatever. But also the price of these jerseys. Like I get like whatever texture you're talking about is great, but as a fan, you're not gonna spend $199. I think the Adidas jerseys, like the ones that the players wear, the player version, for $199.
Yeah.
That's insane. Obviously, like that's the one for the players, so you want to give them the best quality possible. But I think it's crazy because $199 is a lot of money, and back 15 years ago, the most expensive jersey was like $100 maybe,
Yeah.
and now it's like doubled in price.
No, I remember them. And you got more material for it too. It used to be thicker. Ryan, what do you think about this?
I mean, like that. I mean, you mentioned like some of the pricing of these jerseys, and if you want to go by just that authentic feel, the I like to relate things to other sports because I think it's easier to contextualize things that way. But the NFL hasn't strayed away from Nike since they've been the primary distributor. The NBA has their contract with Nike till like 2040 or something like that. And the one that I know got a lot of backlash was the NHL going to Fanatics, where there's like a huge drop off in the quality of the material, and that one doesn't just have had players talking, it had fans kind of talking as well of that changeover, but at the end of the day, and you can correct me on this, John, but a lot of the fans, we mostly think about the fashion of it all. With you guys, I'm sure playing on the pitch, it's more about the functionality of it, breathability, weight, maybe the type of material and like sweat absorption and stuff like that. So I'm sure for the fans, the designs are cool and everything else is like that. But John, I'm sure can attest to more of like the functionality of the wearing it while having it out there.
Yeah, I think right now there's also in the last couple of years there's new like people wear jerseys with jeans.
Yeah, blow culture.
Yeah, it's like the culture of it now. I have my T90s also. It's just like the new thing is wearing like soccer stuff on the street.
Or even just things that look like a soccer jersey, which you were seeing a lot of like replicas of like random made up names of soccer teams, and it's cool, and like you see the like creativity is not necessarily like lacking. It's just more like how much are these big corporations like Adidas kind of like hindering the creativity process because hey, we have to make a dollar on everything that we make.
I mean, yeah, like we can get into the business part, and you're the professional in this, right? I mean, we can also get into the World Cup kits and how it's there's so much, there's a need of like new stuff all the time, and the retro jerseys are now on, the retro cleats are now on, and it must be really hard for Adidas and Nike and all these big companies to keep up with the demand because like we talk about, soccer is worldwide. Everyone, like you're seeing the jerseys and you're on the street and you'll see people wearing a Man United jersey from 2010 with Ronaldo on the back. And I think that's the beauty of the sport. That is just like the impact that it has culturally on people and the way they dress and the way that their fashion is.
For sure. And then we also see small corporations, small manufacturers such as I forget the name. I think it's Icarus, the ones who were working with Venecia to make the kits back in like 2003 that were like really cool. They look like
The Nocta
florals.
ones?
I think so.
The one that just came out this week. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen that one.
There's Venezia just came out there with their fourth kit with Nocta.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So, but see, a team like Venecia, who are they still in second division?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the corporations, but we're not gonna get into that. That's a whole different conversation we can have. But since we're gonna talk about money, we can talk about the MLS valuations that came out this week. Inter Miami is now the most expensive team in the league, the most valuable. Ryan, let's talk about this since you're in Florida.
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me at all that Inter Miami is taking the top spot. I was doing some digging over last couple of days of what these evaluations mean in the grand scheme of things, and one of the things I think kind of surprised me through all this is how a lot of the teams that are currently at the top, they were pretty much near the bottom not that long ago. Inter Miami, some of the numbers came out like 2018 where they were a brand new franchise, and LAFC was relatively brand new and they were on the lower end of the spectrum. Now, you have LAFC who are amongst the top of the bunch. Galaxy have always been up there, but Inter Miami being up there, I think a large part of it is in part due to the overall success they've had over the last 3 years between the arrival of Messi and everything that's been coming through, the Leagues Cup Championship, the MLS Cup Championship, a supporter shield within that mix. And one of the things I think never eludes sports, and this is true in all sports, is your value is tied to your success, right? Like, even though some teams might not necessarily have the best performance, but the biggest names, they tend to be valued lower. And it makes sense that teams like LAFC are within the top. You have your New York teams, your Galaxies. It's more of a brand name type of a thing. And I think the most critical part in all this is not just the evaluation of the teams, but the league in general, because now you have, however many teams over a full $1 billion of valuation now. When you look back at stats from 2018, 2019, and at the time they weren't scratching $500 million. So you look at the teams, but look at the league. You went from $500 million as your absolute ceiling to 5 plus over 1 billion. It just shows where this league has headed over the last 31 years now.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting what you're saying, because out of the top 5, 4 are newer clubs, right? Inter Miami, LAFC, Atlanta United, New York City FC, and then Galaxy, which is a renowned name around the world. But it's just a testament to these new clubs coming in to new markets, doing a great job to sell a product. In the case of Miami, I think it's really the fact that they got Messi. They don't even have their own stadium yet, and they're still the most valuable team in the league. So I think it's a great testament to the work that they've done, especially bringing Messi. I think he is the reason why they're the most valuable team. But you know the brand they have. I think I was in Africa a couple months ago, and then you see Inter Miami jerseys the same way you see Ronaldo jerseys with Al Nasser, and you're like, this would have never happened 10 years ago because the Messi brand or the Ronaldo brand is bigger than any team in the world,
teams, yeah.
which is crazy. But other teams like LAFC, Atlanta United, which they've both been champions since they came in the league less than 10 years ago, and they've done a great job to grow their club and to get that valuation, because that also means they're working with they're working their academy, ticket revenue, jersey sales, all these things.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how these newer teams will be able to, you know, have longevity in this. Because we see LA Galaxy up there, which we know has been around since the beginning of the league. And the question is, how can teams like Inter Miami, who are in a way, right now, yes, the success, but once the Messi brand kind of walks away from the picture, what is that going to look like for, for the team regarding the fan base,
That's a great
You
question.
know, one of my Yeah, one of my things on that, Emmanuel, is how you mentioned expansion teams and how many have come in since, the last several years. One of the biggest shockers, I think, both expectedly and unexpectedly, is that San Diego sits top 10 and they've been around for a single season. They're already over, they're already in a top 10 threshold within year number one. And you mentioned new markets, new fan bases, and how that has its effect and everything. But I think what Miami and San Diego have shown is that, soccer can most certainly work here in the US and it can work instantly there's no other reason why San Diego could be in the top 10 if the base wasn't there. Playoff success or, a first place seed in the conference doesn't hurt for San Diego either. The championships don't hurt Inter Miami either. But you kind of have that perfect mix of you find a fan base that cares about the sport, that want the team and the players there, and then you add success to that as well. And this is true across, almost every single sport. There's a reason why the Dallas Cowboys continue to be in the lead for as long as they have in the NFL. There's a reason why, it's the Lakers and the Celtics in the NBA year in and year out as well. And these two teams have kind of shown that blueprint can still work in a different sport. You find the base, you get the success, and the money kind of comes to you in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I was reading about, which I thought was really interesting, was the situation with the Vancouver Whitecaps. That they've signed a 1-year lease now to stay at their current stadium. But there's been a lot of talk about them possibly relocating. There's cities like Vegas, Phoenix, Detroit, Indianapolis, who are still fighting for that maybe last MLS spot. And I'm sure Vancouver is going to do everything possible to keep them there. But I was wondering, what do you guys think about that situation? And what do you think would be a city that doesn't have MLS? Who do you think deserves one?
I can say this based on what I've dug up is that in terms of the actual, valuation, surprisingly enough, the Caps are towards the bottom. They only are above CF Montreal in the entirety of the MLS entirely, which, you'd expect some sort of growth, but they actually were pretty stagnant from the year before. So the fact that the Caps didn't really gain any ground despite the success they had is a real shocker. But you've heard rumblings of the NBA might go to Vegas. That wouldn't be surprising. Or having a team in Phoenix with the overall soccer passion they have over there, that wouldn't surprise me either. But, there's also teams in the Northeast who could make a serious push for a top-end franchise. Think of your Indies. Think of your Detroit's, which I'm surprised doesn't have one. Pittsburgh also doesn't have one, which is, big sports market. And I think, especially with this winter schedule, I would, in a way, like to see some of those northern markets get some of that because it's going to be a place that's going to be really interesting once the winter calendar comes. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go south first, just sheerly due to the fan base that's there, just in terms of the love of the game itself.
For sure. And I think you were asking who would be like a good state. that I believe would, be a good candidate. I think so. Charlotte FC likes to include South Carolina as part of the demographic, as like we represent you. But to be fair, there's a lot of people from South Carolina. There's a big fan base that will probably want to have their own team, and the fan base is there. Like we know it. Charleston Battery is there. The academies are there. The uh, competitiveness of players that comes out of South Carolina. It's also a huge number, given, for example, a program like Clemson, who produces player after player that ends up being drafted into the MLS. So I think a good state to benefit from something like that would be South Carolina.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I'm also wondering. I know there's been a lot of talk, but at what point will the MLS say this is it? We're not growing the league anymore because they haven't said that yet. So that gives the understanding that they're open to some other markets. I mean, I was playing in Phoenix for 3 years, and to talk about bringing Phoenix to MLS was always there. It's a huge market. It has every other major league sport. The same thing with Vegas. What bringing NFL, talk about NBA. It's really interesting that they still don't have as many major league sport teams considering how big the city is, and it's like the hub of entertainment of the US.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be really interesting to see what MLS does with that.
For sure.
In a way, if you want to kind of go into Vegas specifically, the Vegas sports bubble didn't really come until, if you want to talk about, major sports in the US, it didn't really come until like 2017-ish when the Golden Knights came to Vegas and they went on a Stanley Cup final run in their first year. And then you have the success of the Aces coming right around that same time where they won their first championship in 2022. So you kind of had this perfect blend of opportunity coming for Vegas. The Raiders moved there sometime right around 20, in the late teens, early 2020s. And but the Oakland A's still, well, I got to change that, scrap that, because they're not the Oakland A's anymore. But you have the Athletics in baseball. They're changing over to Vegas, whatever that situation is like. And I wouldn't be surprised if, USL has a team there now with the Lights, but I would be unsurprised if MLS takes a swing there, especially since there's rumors that the NBA, Adam Silver, might expand to Vegas. And soccer, I feel, would be the natural follow-up to have that entry into that entryway into the southwest of the U.S.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, since we're talking about taking money and investing it in different cities of the United States, we can also talk about the impact of American money in leagues such as like the Premier League, that's been going on for the past couple of years with Man United. So how can we take that and convince investors such as them to, hey, how about you take the money and you help the Vancouver Whitecaps kind of like figure out a better business strategy to become a more competitive team financially wise, or just help other markets in the United States just grow.
When we talk about business, it's really interesting to see what you can get for the same amount of money, right? Because we talk about how expensive it is to get a MLS franchise or a USL franchise, but doing it in Europe, there's maybe a higher risk, but also a higher reward if things go well. Because you can look at the case of Wrexham, right? They went in, spent $2 million, and now their club is valued at $345 million, right? So I'm not great at math, but that's a big increase in valuation. While the same thing in the US, if you bought an MLS club 10 years ago, the valuation of the club has gone up. And as an investor, when you look at buying a club, you're barely profiting on the daily operation of the club. You're only profiting when you sell the club after the value of the club goes up. In Europe, that can go from promotions, winning championships, selling players. And here in the US, the really only chance is the club to grow its value, as well as hopefully the league will grow its value.
in the US, right, we follow a lot of the same rules as other American sports here, like salary caps, roster limitations, stuff like that. But internationally, that doesn't really exist. Of you have to pay a certain amount to your players per year, and you have a ceiling on that. That's why you have some of these crazy transfers and these crazy loans that come out year in and year out for that money aspect. And when you kind of play by the American rules on a worldwide stage, you're kind of capped in that way, right? Because no other no other league in the world has, salary cap. They don't really have those roster limitations that the MLS kind of put on themselves in a way. And you mentioned a lot of these American owners in English clubs. Well, the money is absolutely there. But you can make the argument most certainly that the limitations of the roster rules allow for high-end players to go other places because they have to be within the roster rules or the cap or whatever else may be. And like you mentioned earlier, John, getting those guys out in Europe, kind of building that brand that way with fees and transfers and everything else can be a way to generate that, to drive that revenue as well. And that's why we have so many of these young American players, not just getting their chance to play in Europe, but popping off in some cases, both on the men's side and the women's.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as a player than as an investor. The high risk, high reward thing. If you're willing to take a risk to go to Europe and say, I'm going to have a great year, there's a higher chance that someone in another league is going to see you and invest in you and give you a better contract. While here in the US, you're hoping that if you do that, you're going to go to Europe in a way. So the higher risk, high reward is there, both as a player as an investor, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we do see a little bit of the effects of that American money coming in, right? For example, they have those ideas that coming from the American system, they kind of want to implement in European soccer, and they just don't kind of work. And we see it in the drop off of performance, like Manchester United finally starting to come back into their actual form, and starting to compete against Man City, who's been extremely successful in the past 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard to compete in a league like the Premier League where there's all these teams have so much money and they're investing so much money. And I think that's really the differentiator between the Premier League and other leagues where there's maybe 2 or 3 teams that are top and have such an advantage economically, because the more you generate, the more money you have and the more money you can invest. While in the Premier League, it seems like all these clubs are just investing more money and investing more money. And you just see the amount of money that teams like Arsenal, Tottenham, Man City, Chelsea, they're investing so much money, and only one team wins the league. And only one team is successful at the end of the year. And for example, you look at Man United, which went after Sir Alex Ferguson left. It's hard. It takes time to get back into winning. The same thing with Arsenal, right? Since Arteta came and Wenger left, they've struggled to win any trophies, really. And it's just really competitive in the Premier League.
I can't help but look at the Man United situation, and even though my brain always goes onto the United Strand from Instagram and TikTok, shout out to him. Unfortunate that they couldn't get that 5th win, but you have top names in every league for a reason, right? We mentioned at the very jump, it's a combination of the name, the longevity, how long you've been around, but success as well. And there's a reason why Man City have always been amongst the top of the EPL. Man U, I know they had their little slump there in the early part of the decade, and they've really come up in the last several years. And that pay to play kind of thing, or that where payment kind of correlates to how well you do. It's very similar and different in a way that college football has done a lot of things where you're allowed to kind of pay players a little more. You're allowed to kind of have more loopholes within the system to bring in those better players, maximize what they can do, and the output has come, even though it hasn't always been 1-for-1 so far in this new NIL college sports situation. It's been not proven. Proven is the complete wrong word to use, but it's been it often correlates in not just the EPL, but kind of, I feel like, worldwide soccer as well.
You mentioned the United Strand. Did you guys see Wayne Rooney kind of going off about this situation? Not sure if you guys saw it, Twitter.
I mean, this guy is this guy who's on social media. I don't think he thought it was going to take this long, but it's not his fault. Man United didn't win 5 in a row. I mean, I get why people are upset because he's getting attention and people are like, well, he doesn't really care. He's just getting attention.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a Man United fan and he wants his team to win. But for me, Wayne Rooney attacking him like he's doing something wrong it doesn't really make sense because it's not his fault that the team doesn't win. But I guess my question is, Emmanuel, are you gonna choose a team this year in the MLS? And if they don't win 5 games in a row, you won't cut your hair?
Could probably pick Montreal. If they don't win, no, don't do that to me. I'm not doing that. I have to cut my hair, man. I get headaches if it grows more than 5 inches. Ryan, would you be up for a challenge like that?
No. I like it nice and short. I get it done once a month on the month. If it deviates too far to like 6 weeks, it drives me nuts. So it's like I think the longest I've gone is maybe 9 weeks, and that was just because life got in the way and I couldn't get there. So at least to my regular barber. So no, there's no way I'd ever be doing that. I'd be wearing hats like crazy just to keep the thing, tamed.
Dude. But I've seen you with long hair. Why did you do this?
I mean, I went the whole last year without cutting my hair,
Really?
and that was not because Barca didn't win 5 in a row. It's just because I was growing it out for my wedding. So
Right, they're out there.
I mean, yeah, talking about 5 wins in a row, and then as we speak right now, Man City's beating Fulham. But Arsenal's got a good head start on everybody. Right now it's only a 3 point difference, but in the Premier League that can be a lot, right? Because of how competitive it is. So do we see Arsenal winning the league, or is Manchester City gonna come in and scoop it in the last minute like they did last season?
I feel like Arsenal is in this position very often. I feel like they're ahead on how long they've been able to hold the lead in the league, but also I think Arsenal's got it. I think if they don't win this year, when are they going to win it? It's not a great year for Man City. It's not a great year for Man United. Liverpool are struggling. If it's not now, I don't know when, to be honest.
Sorry, I thought something was going to come up. No, like with Arsenal and Man
Thinking
City,
about Arsenal winning?
No. I thought I had to burp. That's on me. It went away though. We can cut all that out.
I'm leaving it.
But no, no, don't leave that in, please don't. But the APL has been like kind of like a three-headed monster for the last several years, and Arsenal and Man City have been within it each of the last several seasons. I wouldn't be surprised if either team, with the experience they have of trying to take it down the stretch, they're down to it in the final match day when it comes to it. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Especially with how I don't know what the end of their schedules look like, but you could have teams maybe fighting for relegation or trying to stay within that top seed. And Man City, they're a team that've been there and done it time and time before. Arsenal, they've been a team that have come up just a step short over the last several years, both times the last two. And, if it's Arsenal's time, it is Arsenal times, but I would not be shocked if Man City just hold up just because they've been there, done that before, and they know how to get the job done.
Well, hopefully for the sake of Arsenal fans like myself, we do win it this year and then go another 30 years without winning it. I'd be happy with that. Let's end it on this. People may not know who your Premier League team is. So what if we share that with them?
I don't have a team that I support fully, but I like how Man City plays. I like Guardiola and his style of play, and I like when they win.
Yes, because he's a Barcelona fan. Ryan, what about yourself, man?
I mean, I've mentioned this to you guys before, how I kind of got into the sport a little later in life. So so the EPL specifically is not one that I have like a specific rooting interest for, but I'm gonna say something that's gonna get a lot of people upset that I don't really follow teams when it comes to soccer. I follow players. Um, so in terms of the EPL, just watching, um, when he's up and ready, like I know he's dealt with a couple of injuries here and there, I believe. Like just seeing Salah on the rag, just doing his thing, and sometimes he can just be an absolute beast on the field. Or when De Bruyne was, kind of in his heyday with Man City. I love how strong and powerful Erling Haaland is. So it's not really a team thing for me, but I love the individual players of the EPL. Just kind of seeing how they do, and it kind of all comes down to how they'll perform when the big dance comes up in like 6 months from now.
For sure. And then for the viewers, do let us know who your team is. That'd be pretty cool. That'll help us, you know, kind of think of like cool things and fun things we can do here as part of the pod, together. So do make sure you leave a comment, Um, but yeah, we talked about some interesting things here. Uh, had some strong opinions about the MLS kids. And yeah, I mean we have more we want to do, which we'll be working on. But yeah, what do you have going on this weekend?
This weekend, Valentine's Day. So very busy day. Taking out the missus
Oh
for
yeah,
dinner.
no games this weekend for you.
No games, no games. I'll be watching a lot of soccer.
A
That's
lot
for
of
sure.
soccer for sure. Ryan.
I mean, I'm gonna be having some soccer and some Olympics coverage going on in my however many boxes I'll have in my TV. So it's just gonna be a lot of that. Just enjoying every event that comes out. Just have fun watching the games, and yeah, with everything in full swing, just enjoying the downtime before it gets really crazy in about 2 weeks.
But yeah, guys. So stay tuned, and episode 3 will be coming out soon. Well, next week, but or we'll see.
Mhm.
But yeah, stay tuned. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up. As weather in North Carolina heats up. And yeah, see you on the next one.